It's a beautiful, not so wintry day out here at Elduets Farm as we are getting ready for spring, and one of the big steps on the bushes and trees where you have to do pruning to prepare them for the growth of the coming year. What we have here is elderberries. We're also going to cover persimmon trees after that. To start here with the elderberries, my father Ron is going to show you what he's doing here to prepare these for spring. Along with that, we're going to be taking the cuttings, also demonstrating how to start new plants as well.
And what we're going to do now is we're just going to trim these elderberries down to size. They were just put in last year. All the growth that you see here, this is in the last year. What we'll do next year is we'll trim these down to the ground. But now we're just going to trim them some and take cuttings off of them. We're just going to trim them all to about this size right here.
So can you show the size of what you planted last year?
The size of what I planted last year, this is what I planted from here to the ground. So everything else that you see up above that was the growth from this past year. I'm just going to trim these all to the same size. Then we'll come back and trim those up for a size that we can plant.
Now the purpose of the pruning as we're doing this, I know it helps to cut back this growth, but can you explain a little about how it stimulates the growth of the remaining plants?
Well, the elderberries themselves will grow on new growth. So we have to cut these back so that new growth comes out of the plant so that we actually do get the elderberries. And so all the growth is stimulated from cutting these back. And it kind of hurts a little bit to cut them, but they really like it. You can see how much growth. See here again, this is what was planted last year, just a stick. So all this is new growth from last year. So we cut it back again this year, and we're going to have that much growth again. Okay.
Here's all the cuttings here.
Let me just give you an example.
Well, most of them. I hadn't picked up the first plant yet. The first two.
Here's a couple more. This is another example of how the growth goes. This one we had to cut back early because it was damaged. But here again, this is the original stick that we put in the ground, and you can see all the growth around it. So all the growth comes up from the bottom.
Which in future years we'll be cutting them back probably close to that far, right?
Right.
It's just because this was their first winter, we didn't want to cut them back that far yet until the roots are established. You want to help with the elderberries too? Yeah, you both want to help. This one wants to make sure that anything left over gets cleaned up.
What we're going to do now is take the cuttings that we just did, and we're going to prepare them for planting. And here we go. We'll cut one off right here. And this is an example of a cutting that we can develop into a new plant. We cut the bottom at an angle. This is going to go into the ground up to about this point right here. The roots will come out here, and this will be the continued growth on the plant. And we'll cut this one. We'll cut this at an angle right here, and we'll cut it off up here. Oop. Trim back some of this growth, and there you go. Here's a couple nice cuttings for you. And we expect the germination of these plants to be probably about 80%. all we're going to do, we'll show you what we're going to do with those. Here again, we cut this at an angle here. That way it goes down in the ground better. You want to clip off those bottom ones. And then this one, I think this one's too small. We'll let that one go. Okay.
And there we go. So the top is flat, right?
Yes. The bottom is at an angle just because it's going in the ground.
Is there any reason we don't want it long? As far as well below the knob?
Don't need it. The roots are going to come out from there. These are the cuttings that we got from the pruning of the elderberry bushes. You can see there's probably 30, 40 cuttings that we got out of the plants. And we're going to show you how we're just going to put them in the ground. Go ahead and make a hole. Okay. You want to hold these? The hole just has to go about halfway down from where the bottom two leaves were. Let me show you on this one. So on this, what we would do is we would plant this in the ground about halfway up to the next nodes. So just about that deep on every one. And there it is. What we'll do is take and put some mulch around that, and that's about all it takes. We really don't even need to water it this time of the year, and it should take off just fine.
So one other part we almost forgot, which it's fine that we missed it on the first one, is we've got some aloe vera that had a little rough time, but the aloe vera, the gel from the aloe vera plant, is a natural root promoter. So we're just putting some on the end. This is not necessary at all for elderberries. They will root very easily, but it's kind of something that we have this.
Go ahead
Obviously
and put it
this
right here too.
Put some there too.
Yeah.
We have this leaf is dying, and of course if you were doing this as a plan, it is of course much better to use fresh undamaged aloe, but we're kind of in the situation where it's not necessary for the elderberry. But we have this, and if we don't do this, it's just going to go to waste. So we'll go ahead and give it an extra edge as we're planting it. All right, we're going to go ahead and put down about another half dozen here in this row, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the persimmons. So let's go ahead and get some aloe on these joints as well as on the bottom. Again, just giving a little extra edge. And to note, some other options for natural root promoters are honey, cinnamon, and onion water. And there are others as well, but those are 3 additional ones I know of right off the top of my head. You can apply any of those to the root growing surface of a plant when you're transplanting or when you're putting cuttings in, and it'll help give them an extra edge in the root growing process. All right, so we'll go ahead and get these down and then move on.
Line it up, Deb.
All right, and to note too, we're using a hammer and stake to make the hole in the ground. That's just because this ground here is extremely hard, so it's just where we can go ahead and make a good hole without too much difficulty. But if you have softer ground, you could use either a piece of rebar and just push it in, or a stake, or even your hand if the ground is soft enough. You just have to make sure you make a hole deep enough to put it about halfway down. Here we are at the persimmon tree now. This has started in a couple of previous videos as we've talked about taking care of it and picking. But today we're doing the maintenance. Now, as you can see from the height, it is way too tall because it's so tall that we cannot pick the fruit from the higher branches. So I'm not going to bring it all the way down to reaching level, but try to get it a little bit closer, because basically the top third to half is no good to us. I mean, yes, the birds can get it as it drops off, other animals will get it too, but the main thing is we do want the fruit for us. So the pruning today is I'm going to take off 3 of the upper branches so that we can shorten it, have it focus its growth where it'll be within reach where we can make the most use of it. And of course take those 3 upper branches and we're going to go ahead and plant those as well as some trimmings. Now of course they're going to be much bigger than most trimmings that you would normally root, but I'm going a little conservative on that process. So I'm going to take those off and then we'll take them down from there. Make sure the camera and anyone holding it does not get caught in the fall. Okay, make sure everything's up here. That one's off, and it looks like it's going to let it. Nope, got it caught. Better back the camera up so when it comes down it won't.
Much better height.
Yeah.
That's right. We can grab it.
We'll get now.
We can grab it.
Yep, we'll grab it once we get back down. Now for the next one. This, of course, is going a little rougher than I want to, but having to reach in that, we can neaten it up once we get it down here. What I forgot on the first one is because these are a little bigger, we want to take the approach of like actually cutting a tree. Cut a notch on one side, and then the actual slit on the other. And, of course, it falls not quite towards me. All right, good safe landing. All right, I'm going to take off one more high branch, a little smaller one, and that'll do it for tonight. There we go. Got everything a little closer to in reach. Now we'll take these 3 cuttings and plant them. We got the biggest branch off the persimmon tree here. We've already dug a hole here, used the post hole digger that I demonstrated in the tree video. Just digging down. If you look on the post hole digger, we went down over 2 feet, about 26, 27 inches, which should give a nice deep start for this. And as I'm standing here and looking, I realize I hit water. So this tree's going to get moisture. Yeah, see, we're right here near the pond. I knew if we went deep enough we would get water. I was hoping we could go a little bit deeper, but that's all right. We know that this tree is going to get plenty of moisture. So what I've done, went down about a little over 2 feet. Got a little bit of a contribution here from our donkey. Going to go ahead and drop that in the bottom. It is some dried droppings. It's not something fresh. It hasn't broken down yet, but it is dried. And I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit of dirt on top of it so the roots are not going to hit it immediately, but it'll be in there breaking down. So when it first starts to send out the roots, by then it should be completely ready to use for its nutrition. Put a little bit more because you want to make sure it doesn't hit it right away until it's had time to compost down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and, as this was just some leaf litter that was on the ground over there from our trees, throw it in there for a little bit more nutrition. Give it something to hit as it goes down. Of course, don't want to add too much here. I want to make sure most of the depth of this is for the tree itself. And of course, it is freshly cut. And almost forgot. Where did we drop the, oh, there it is. Starting to get dark here. We're trying to beat the dark. A little bit of aloe. Put on here. Yeah, gotta remember. Gotta watch those tips there. But can continue to work. In fact, I'm actually putting that right on the aloe leaf that I just dropped in there, so that should really get some root growth going. I don't remember if I had said, but well, you want to make sure that all the dirt's in there. We're going to water it in just a moment. Get that all packed in as well. Hopefully in the next year or two we'll start putting out fruit. And of course the bigger, I would think, would give it a much better chance of survival. The bigger it is, it'll be all that easier to get established. Of course, it'll take time to build up its root network, so it'll be well nourished to be able to put out fruit. But hopefully that will happen pretty quickly. And of course, this is all, when it does put out fruit here, it will all be in reach, so we will be able to make full use of it. And of course, something we could do depending on the weather, what environment you're in, what climate zone. Of course, here, for the rest of this season, we're not anticipating anything below freezing. If it is, no more than a couple degrees. But it's always a good idea to go ahead and mulch around it as well. We can throw some of the fertilizer, some of the rabbit manure on top, maybe even scatter a little of the donkey or cow manure around it, not right on it, because you want to make sure that's broken down before it actually goes right up against the tree. But there it is. Let me go get some water. All right, here we are with the water. Now I've got 2 gallons here, but you want to pour some on, let it soak in. That'll get the soil ready to absorb it. Pour more, let it soak in. Remembering this triggers the tree to grow. This pouring the water on immediately also works any air pockets out and helps the soil settle in. New tree on the farm. Now we do still have the other 2 that we do need to go ahead and plant, but as it is getting dark, it's not going to pick up very well, but I trust this has been a good example and demonstration of how you can go ahead and root a cutting. There are, of course, several ways. I'd certainly invite you, if you know some other ways, I know you can do it through soaking in water, soilless media, sand, perlite. If you got some suggestions on different ways to go ahead and root some cuttings, leave them down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, hear about your experience, whether it be with persimmon, also elderberries. Be sure to like the video here if you found it useful. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, so you can see all the other great things we've got going on and learn more about building your own farm, homestead, and building your own food independence. All right, thanks a lot for watching. We are following up here on this pruning a couple months later. You can see the persimmon tree is in full growth, a little bit shorter, but everything's more in reach now. Doesn't quite look manicured, but it is a healthy growth. Nothing looks extremely odd about it. In fact, it is really taken off. We'll get up close in just a moment and show you how it's fruiting and see the great results we're looking forward to in the next few weeks. You coming to inspect the work here? Do you approve? Nope, fruit's still on the tree out of reach. There's the tree. See up close, we have lots of fruit coming in. There you can see someone who enjoys being able to reach up and grab some of the leaves when they come down towards her. And you can see here how the branches have grown over the driveway somewhat, so that this is actually going to have to be trimmed very soon. And so this will probably be a midsummer pruning that we'll do in a upcoming video, but that's one for another time. And we'll see how those work as far as rooting them during their midsummer growth phase instead of during their winter dormant phase. You can see everything is doing beautifully. Got lots of fruit coming in, and the tree is putting all of its resources into producing what will nearly all be in reach. In fact, you look up close there, even the area where we cut it off, it is growing back extra thick. There's going to be a lot of new growth coming out from there as well. And the rain's starting, so I'm going to get the camera under protection. And here's a look down the line of our elderberry bushes, so you can see how well they've grown back. Huge. They're bigger than they were even last year. So all the cutting back, clearly it did not set them back at all. In fact, it was very good for them. I'm going to go ahead and take a closer look here. There are some blooms coming in, and down the line you can see the white flowers of the elderberry. Here they are. You can see how tall they are. The stalks are thicker. In fact, our pigs here, they're onto a different one of this is a weed growing here, but they were actually munching on a few of the leaves that had come through, which is okay. We knew that was part of the plan when we planted them so close to the fence. The idea was to share it with them as well. There's a good look. Here's some of the blooms coming up. We're going to have a nice harvest of a lot of elderberries, along with a lot of new shoots coming next season. I don't know how well you can pick out, but that one stalk alone is bigger than the whole plant was last year. In fact, you can go ahead and look back on the earlier parts of the video, but as a reference, this right here is about how tall it was when we cut it back this year. So essentially all that is an increase in growth from the previous year. And that's just a single stalk. We have more stalks than we did last year. So it is growing up nicely. All of them are. Prefer full direct sun. As you can see, of course, they're doing just fine here. As we get more into the shaded area, you see these did not grow nearly as well, still doing just fine. But then coming into our darker area, these did not do as well. So of course still healthy, strong, but nowhere near the growth in the heavily shaded area. So when you're planting elderberries, make sure you put them in full direct sun. Clarify that these elderberries do get shade for at least part of the heat of the day. I do not know offhand if that is the best for them or if they should be in full sun all day, but that is the situation we're growing ours in. Full sun for part of the day, but not the entire day. Let's also go ahead and get a look at the base. Where you saw earlier we had cut it back and left just the little stump down there. It has now become a thick trunk, and you can see the small branches growing off of it are thicker, or about as thick as the original stump was just a couple months ago.